All right, so what is going on, everybody? Today we have a pretty anticipated video. We have our favorite moments for high school. So originally, what I did was I had like a number. I think I said I was going to do top 10, but after digging in the memory bank and thinking for a long time, what I came to realize was, man, there was a lot of funny moments, a lot of great times I had at this Mountain View High School place. And I actually ended up breaking the video into two parts, right? Part one, which is the video you're watching right now, is going to be my favorite memories from freshman, sophomore, and junior year. And part two is going to be senior year. Now, um, basically, that's just kind of the way how things were, like recency bias in life. I obviously remember way more things from this year than I do from those 3 years beforehand. So I did my best to kind of balance it out. But, like everything in life, it's never going to be perfect. So, over the past few days with graduation and, senior party and recap on things, it feels like a good time to do this video. So, without further ado, let me get right into it. So, thinking about, I'm going to separate this into grade. Thinking about freshman year, one of the first memories, kind of the best, because freshman year, first semester specifically, was like a rough time for me. This was like, I am not going to lie, like my grades sucked. My pull game sucked. Everything sucked, right? Um, some things never change, I guess. But one of my vividest memories was when was well, not when, but honors English 9 with Ashley Walter, right? Specifically my first semester class. Like, and this class was crazy because you literally had like all of the Chippewa hooligans in one class. We're talking like Ian Tsai, Yi Chin, Yatharth, me, Carter Lassard, Austin Jin, Josh Lane, Matthew Shen. I could be forgetting someone even in there. It was like all of those kids, right? So basically, like, in Miss Walters, like a very, I guess it depends on the people in the class, but a lot of times she's like a very trollable teacher. So we would all just mess around every day in that class. In one of the like, I'm gonna tell a short story. One of the memories that sticks out to me from that class is because it's an English class, right? You have to do a lot of discussion and stuff, and we have like groups in that class, right? So I remember I would usually go with Max DeRosier and Emmanuel, and then like Ian, Austin, Carter, and all those guys would go in a group together, right? And I remember one day Carter, like I was sitting in part of the classroom with him. He decided, leave his boys, and he worked with I think it was Nora Swingen and Catherine Wacker, and there might have been a couple other girls in there too. And then Ian Tsai, like being the troll he is, right? He comes over, he's like, pals before gals, right? And Catherine Wacker sitting there, right? She turns around, she goes, chicks before micro dicks. And I was like, what the? I was like, dang, dang, this is crazy. But that was one of the, I doubt anybody remembers that story, but that was one of the funniest things that happened to me in that class. And even second semester in that class, I didn't really have nearly as many friends there. The only person I really talked to in that class was Matthew. But if you haven't watched it already, go ahead and check out Story Time She Gave Me a Zero. Probably post in like November or October or something, but it's a banner vid. And I actually included that story in a lot of my college essays, actually in my Common App, I believe. So, yeah, that was probably one of the first, one of the only things I remember from that first semester, one of the only things I want to remember from that first semester. Moving on, second semester, got a couple more here, but one of the things was that every day after school, I would go to the back gym and play basketball with Manit, Adam, Sendesh, and Mark Hitty. Shout out Draclib, right? And like, it was always a good time, and people love to disrespect me and people love to hate on me. I know there is video evidence on this channel of me getting 11 0'd, right? But like, I'm not joking, man. You put me in the gym with a bunch of, with a bunch of not bums, but like players who aren't extraordinarily athletic or don't play basketball. I'll go crazy. Like people ask me, I have a stroke. Like I will be stroking it. Ask anybody who was at McCullough Park last summer, man. I would go crazy there. And I kind of fell off, but hey, back in middle school when I didn't have much to do, every day. It was 2 hours outside of my garage playing basketball. There's this stroke did not, come by accident. So, uh, yeah, that was one of the really good times to remember. And then in regards to classes, probably my favorite second semester class would have had to be AP Macroeconomics with Martha Rush. And this one was less about the class, more about the people. And I think that's the case with almost anything. But I remember my table, like, and macro was like very table dependent. So, like the group you ended up with, like that's the group you were with the rest of the semester, and like you guys like did like dang near everything together, right? And I sat next to my guy Kernish Couch, which is like perfect because you got your guy. Like I wouldn't have to know anyone else in the class. But then, um, uh, beyond that, like I had a lot more friends in the class. Shout out to Jake Lee, wherever he is, Maryland, New York, Connecticut. Shout out to Joseph Hahn. Shout out to Cameron Dalbo. We ran Urban Plan, and it was a really fun time. And two of the things I remember is number one. So it was me, Kernish, and then ahead of us were Isabel and Olivia Johnson, and then ahead of them, right? So they sat facing us, but ahead of them, facing away from us, I want to say was Yatharth and Chandon. Yeah, shout out to Chandon. He's definitely not watching this video, but shout out because like some of the people I mentioned here will be watching the video. Some of them mentioning it, won't be watching the video. But I'm sitting basically facing Yathar's screen, right? And it was like the last week of school. And this dude was flat out depressed. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, YSL4, if you're watching this, and I'm not trying to expose you. There's another story I can tell from the Respect retreat that would be 10 times worse for your look. But this one, he was like, let me get to the point. He was scrolling Student View for like 20 minutes, just sitting there staring at his grades. And like people in our class were laughing at this dude, preying on his downfall. They had phones out, looking at his grade book. Like it was crazy, man. Everybody was making fun of him. So that was macro. And then the next two I have are kind of ninth grade and 10th grade combined. One of them I have to mention orchestra in here because even though I ended up quitting and even though I kind of hate violin now, it was definitely a good time. I've covered Laurentian a lot on this channel and videos and Instagram posts and whatnot. But that was always a really fun time. And then even thinking about that SEC honors orchestra field trip where I've also covered this in a YouTube video on my channel. Story time, I got kicked from the squad. Check it out, probably from December. So, but like basically orchestra, choir, and band were all there. I'm in orchestra, right? So we had to go watch a band perform. And basically what happens is like you perform and there's like a judge grading you. And the judge like straight up went off on them. He's like, y'all trash, y'all suck. And all the orchestra kids here are just laughing their what's off. I'm gonna watch my language in this video. I know there's a lot of young kids who watch these videos, look up to me. He went off on them, and it was the funniest thing ever. But yeah, and then the second one, this one, not really related to school, but NFL draft day, right? So every NFL, I have my friends I talk football with, where I'm a big football enjoyer, but me, Zaylin, and Rohit would usually get on call every year. And then for some reason in ninth grade, I wasn't talking to Rohit. Probably he just moved to Chippewa and was going to Mounds Park Academy. And I just didn't have his contact info or something. I was kind of like a social media reject at that time. But me and Zaylin were on call during the 2019 draft. So that was freshman year. And basically the whole draft process, right? Because you're scouting dudes out 3 weeks beforehand. He's like, please tell me, because he's a Packers fan. He's like, please tell me the Packers do not get Rashawn Gary. It's just, don't even know who he is, but it's just an NFL player, right? He's like, please, and there's what, like 600 people that apply for the draft. Not apply, but you get the point, right? 600 people in the draft, and the Packers were saying that I picked 12, bro. And he's like, please, not Rashawn Gary, bro. What do you know? They pick Rashawn Gary, and this dude goes crazy in calling. Zalen's usually a very mild-mannered dude, and this dude is straight. I can hear him slamming stuff in his house. Why is Rashawn Gary a Packer? He goes crazy, and then he hops, he hangs up on me to go talk to Rohit. And Rohit's funny too, bro. Every year he like has this hope. He's always hoping that like the Saints draft a receiver or something, because recently the receiver position has been pretty bad, and they draft like an offensive lineman, and for like 20 seconds he's pissed, And then like slowly, like afterward, he's like, he starts basically sucking off the pick. And then he's like, he sees the dude get interviewed on screen, and then automatically he likes him. So basically, he's a huge flip flopper. But draft day with those boys, and in general, watching sports in high school is really, really fun and part of the memories. So I already covered sophomore year a little bit, but sophomore year was definitely better for me than freshman year. It was just a shame it got cut short because oftentimes a lot of those best memories come in May. When AP tests are done and you're just jerking off every day in school. Don't clip that. Excuse me, but sophomore year, I would say that like not a ton of specific memories from classes, but like I would say honors English. Once again, both semesters were fun. I love people like to dunk on that class, but one of the best things about honors English is usually you don't get like respectfully, very respectfully, like you don't get any stupid kids in your classes. And I'm going to contradict myself based off what I talk about in semester two. But like semester one, like I remember we the squads in the back. Shout out to Riley Stern if she's watching this. Shout out to Austin Jin. Shout out to Joseph Hahn, Vincent Gao, Elise. Wherever she is, I haven't talked to her in 3 years, but we used to just always mess around the back. And one of the things about Miss Hauschman is like, everyone has like their, I guess, issues with her. I think she is a pretty stubborn teacher sometimes, speaking of which, I got to make a new story time about that Slaughterhouse-5 thing. But one of the things is she's very chill in a sense, and she's practical in some ways. Like every year after the AP test, she just gives her students free time for the rest of the year. Like other teachers, specifically calc teachers, they always make the kids do a project or something, and she never did that. So honors English a lot of time was free time. In semester two, this is where I'm getting a little story. Once again, I didn't really have many friends in my class, but a lot of times what I realized in high school is like when you don't have friends in your class, man, like it's two things. Either the class is going to suck complete balls, or you end up making friends, and it's actually more fun than you would have initially anticipated, right? So this semester, it was like just me, Damian, and Logan, and I, shout out to Damian and Logan, but like they weren't really close friends of mine throughout high school. But we would just go outside and work on like the document every day, and you know how Damian and Logan are, right? So it was just basically me working on the document. And first of all, I remember one day Logan had to take a shit during had to take a crap during class. And for some reason, he brought his school Chromebook there. I still have no idea why. But when we came outside, also there was like another group. Once again, Nora Swingen, I have to bring her up again. And like Grace Molinoff. And like them and Damian would just argue all class. And, I know a lot of people, like if there was a senior superlative most annoying kid in the grade, I hate to say it, but there is a solid chance Damian would have won it. I guess you could say the most annoying thing was like talks the most, says the least. Is kind of synonymous, but people know how Damian is. But to me, what I always say is like, as long as you only have one class with him and don't have to deal with him all day, in a lot of senses, he's free entertainment value. Like obviously if you have too much of him, he might get sickening, but like one class of him, bro, just like don't take everything he says super seriously. It'll probably be pretty funny. But like him and Nora and Grace get into a fight every day, right? And like, no, argue every day, right? And there's one day where they're like arguing about whether or not it's appropriate to hit a woman, right? And like, everyone's kind of in consensus no, and then Damian's like obviously is, being whatever, and he's arguing yes. And then they were like talking about scenarios too, and they're like, okay, what if a woman takes one of your things, right? Takes like some of your stuff, and then like Logan and still like no, and then the girls are like, okay, even at that point, like they were like, if somebody hit, if anybody hits you, or no, if anybody takes your stuff, you're allowed to hit them, right? And then for some reason, Nora just wanted to like, test this out on Damian or something. So Damian, like always, right? He's flexing, and he's like always talking about, money and France and whatnot, right? So he like brings like a bag of like, gourmet cookies or something. And then he's like flashing it off throughout class. And then Nora like picks up and just grabs it and starts running. And like Damian slaps her across the face. And like, I think it was like a light slap because nobody got mad. Like everyone thought it was funny, but it just basically summarized everything that happened in that hour. So like, once again, even though I didn't really have friends in that hour, I guess Johnny Yu was there, but like he's usually always like, just doing his own thing, right? even though I didn't really have friends in that hour, it ended up being pretty fun because just sometimes just watching people do do things is do interesting things is always a good time. And then I have a story about written down on here about Adam Behe and Mark Johnson during Reflect. But thinking about it again, we're either gonna save that or just never talk about it because that one's a classic. Okay, next story is about A Push, right? A Push actually looking back, man, I feel like it was a good class content wise and also people wise it was pretty show. But there's just one specific memory I have is when I was chilling in class, right? So bell just rang, right? I'm in a Clash Royale game, and Benogan's like, turn off your phone, right? And then he is basically like, okay, okay, ladies and gents, right? I was talking about was Mr. Hinseth and Kristen Hines, right? And basically, we want to adjust the grading scale to make it 0.5s, right? Because they had just changed it to a 4-point grading scale. Everyone's trying to figure out how it works, right? And they were like, we want to add 0.5s, like 3.5s. He basically said 3.5s, just like partial mastery, right? And that's what he says. So I'm like, so I raise my hand, right? And I'm like, so are you going to add, 2.5s and 1.5s as well? If Benokin straight up roast my ass, bro. He's like, yeah, you're going to need them especially, right? Because I'm not, I've never seen you get proficiency on anything. So you're going to need those 2.5s and 1.5s. And like our whole class is dying, right? And this dude, like, it's funny coming from Benokin because he always seems super uptight and serious. But yeah, A Push is definitely interesting. I definitely know, looking back, I can think of at least one fella who switched teachers after they had Benokin 2 semesters in a row. I can think of a couple other fellows who just dropped the class after 1 semester. And these are smart people, but, not everyone's cut out for it. And then my final story from sophomore year is actually going to go back to Bethel University. And I remember like it was like my first Frisbee practice there and all the at that point, like the Frisbee team was insane. Like all the seniors were huge and really good, right? And I remember like we were just doing a scrimmage and Jason Carlson was covering me. And for some reason, this Jason Carlson dude, like he needs to take off that number 9 because you're not Austin Jin, right? But also he's playing like Austin Jin because I remember he's covering me and he poached on me super hard. I just remember running deep and scoring on him and then shaking my balls in his face, right? And that would have to be definitely one of my better memories from there as well. Yeah, sophomore year Frisbee was pretty short, but it was pretty fun while it lasted. Okay, so we're gonna move on to junior year. I know this has been a long video, but hopefully it's been a good one. In junior year, it was an experience for me because I was online all year, and I think or almost all year. We'll get to that later. But some people hated it, and I know some other fellas. Shout out Zaid Rizvi who like loved it, and they're like, I can get used to this. But the first thing would probably just have to be like throughout the whole quarantine time, man. The video game tournaments we used to run online, like Krunker, Rocket League, and I'm gonna get hate for saying this, but Among Us. I don't care what anybody says, dude. Prime Among Us, when you had a 10 stack flowing in call, had to be one of the top 3 most funnest things ever, right? And speaking of Krunker, thinking back to the sophomore year, I remember there was this, me and Zaid used to get on in 1v1 every day, the night before, like nights before school, right? And there was one day we had the calc final the next day, and me and Zaid hopped on call. We're like, man, we got to study for that together. No Krunker tonight, right? And like, we both fake study for 10 minutes and we're like, screw it, we got a 1v1 tonight again, right? And I obviously dusted his ass every game. Excuse my language, but that was always a good time. And really, really video games during that period, like even playing, I remember Austin, Ed, and Ian Wayne, they all had a free 6th hour. I think Ian Wayne and Ed took online Chinese or something. And then I don't even know what Austin was doing, to be honest, but they all had a free 6th hour. I unfortunately did not. So I was in chemistry with Mark Dieter. Is that his first name? Is it Mark? I don't think it's Mark. Mr. Dieter, excuse me. And I remember I used to just, unfortunately, I hate to admit it, but I used to just, have the Google Meet on my school Chromebook, bring out the gaming Chromebook and have Rocket League on it and be doing both at once. It was good times. So that was definitely one thing. And then the next story is kind of related to that. So during the Zoom days, what I used to do was 8:35 is early, man. I hate to say it. I know there's some early birds watching this, like shout out to Jason Carlson, but 8:35 is early. And what I used to do, man, when my first hour, second semester. Well, actually, it depends on the day, right? Because your first and second hour, it was block schedule, right? So, sometimes for me, computer science was my first hour, and then sometimes for me, Spanish was my first hour. So, second semester Spanish was my first hour, and since it's at 8:35, what I used to do is I used to always join this, set an alarm for 8:32, join the Zoom, put my Chromebook on my bed, like on the far end of my bed, and go back to sleep, right? So I did that, probably quite a bit during the second semester. And I vividly recall one day, right? We were doing an activity in Spanish. Or no, it was like breakout rooms. Breakout rooms is what it was called, right? So yeah, we were doing activity. We had to do breakout rooms, right? And it's like host invites you to join, right? But I'm sleeping, so I can't see that, right? And Mrs. Randall, I'm laying in bed, right? And Mrs. Randall keeps shouting into the mic. I'm like zoning in and out of consciousness. Miss Randall keeps shouting. She goes, Juan, are you there? So I'm sitting in bed. I'm like, bro, why is she shouting in the mic, dude? Who is Juan? Whoever Juan is a complete bozo. Like that was my mindset. I'm like, you, dude, whoever this Juan dude is needs to shut up. Or whoever this Juan dude is needs to get into the Zoom, right? And so I go back to sleep. I'm asleep for like 30 minutes, right? I wake up and I realize Juan is my Spanish name. So she basically caught me in 8K sleeping or not sleeping during class, but just, screwing around during class because I just wasn't there, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the idiot. I'm the bozo. So that was, and a lot of moments like that happened. There was a time, even though it was my second hour, so like calc, 10:35. There was a couple days where Miss Higgy was lecturing quite long, and I just wasn't really having it. So I did the same technique. I'd go to sleep, and there was a lot of days I woke up and it says your host has ended the Zoom call, and I was like, whoops, because usually she like it tells you to leave. So if you don't leave, it's been pretty obvious that something's not right. And then my final memory from junior year, and this is going to be the last thing to kick off finish off this video, which has been a long one, is the final day of junior year. So the final day of junior year, I actually ended up going in person just because it was the final day. I had to go, right? And it was really, really fun. I can't lie. It was definitely one of my top 8 most fun days of school ever. And I remember in calc, everything was done. So all I did was all we did, because there's a giant group of people, was we were playing cards. And at that time, Jason, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I remember at that time Jason was dating Ella, right? And she came over and she was just there the whole hour pestering Jason while Jason was trying to play cards. But cards there was really fun. I don't even remember what we played. It was some game Connor Shervani knew. Shout out to him if he's watching this. But it was a good time. And then in 6th hour, SB had us go outside, or 3rd hour because it's block schedule. But I remember me, Griffin, Max, and Cameron did 2v2 frisbee, and after 2 points, I was just gassed out of my mind, so I just stopped playing. But definitely, it was just a good time the last day of school. Always is. Okay, so that was it for freshman through junior year. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a comment if you remember any of these stories. And yeah, I appreciate y'all watching, and until next time, peace out.